Self-aware millennial.
Hi, welcome back to the Self-Aware Millennial. This is your host, J.Mix. I'm so happy to be back. I'm rested, mostly, and I'm really excited to be continuing this content for y'all because y'all come back every single week, fresh and ready to go. So let's get it. I'm gonna provide y'all with a quick update on how my last 2 weeks have been while I've been off from the podcast. But if y'all know me and my life, I always have 10 billion things going on. So I am not going to be providing the full update on this platform. I will be saying the rest on my Patreon platform. So I hope you guys can check that out and subscribe so that you can hear more because it's a lot. But what I will provide here is just my current health and what's going on because I know y'all been concerned. So bloody poops, basically I'm still waiting. I'm going to get a colonoscopy sometime in the next couple of weeks and I will know for sure what's going on and I will update y'all on that. The other thing that I've been going through is lots and lots of splurts of just crazy anxiety and just being overly emotional about everything. And I'm not going to discount myself or discredit anything that I'm dealing with because I know that I'm just really pressured right now with everything happening, with me holding the museum accountable, and then I'll be holding my other employer that I had accountable. It's just a lot of pressure on me and also still just trying to do my own thing and like be my own person. Again, I will go into full detail about all of this on the Patreon for y'all so that y'all know what has been going on. There's been a lot other stuff, but I don't really feel comfortable talking completely about it all on this platform. Just for the sake of, I know that my Patreon community is just a little bit more safe and supportive when it comes to these matters, so I want to save it for them. If you would like to become a part of that community, you can go to patreon.com/theselfawaremillennial and subscribe. In continuation with July, which is self-accountability month, I have actually been held accountable twice by others this past. The most recent one was kind of a transpiring of what has been going on within the last, week or two on my personal Instagram and Facebook. But there has been people that have basically kind of inserted themselves into a dialogue that I have created or started like over a post of some sort. And sometimes they're saying things that I normally wouldn't say to people that are in disagreement with me. So I basically had to check them and be like, yo, this is not how I conduct, the way that, I thank them for defending me in my absence, but like the way that they were defending would not be up to the caliber or the respect that I would give that person. So I had to basically tell them, yo, I need y'all to, step back and let me handle it. This person is not that bad. Like they are trying to do X, Y, and Z. Like I know more about this person than they do. So they're coming at it from just a, blind perspective of not knowing the person. But I realized I also was guilty of this as well on other people's like walls and, Facebook profiles and stuff. So I got checked by a friend of mine for doing the exact same thing on his page. And I thanked him for letting me know, that he trusted this person and that I could step back and not, engage. And then I realized that me as a person and being online a lot and just basically kind of being like the social justice warrior of Facebook sometimes, I have to step back, honestly, and just start to remember that there are other ways for me to exert my frustration and my overall anger for everything that is happening. I need to create spaces where I can lay out these frustrations without even having to air out my frustrations on others, especially white people, because they're not necessarily always deserving of seeing my anger. Sometimes I just need to vent to my own people that understand and don't have to ask me any questions. I think that's the main issue. But again, I will go into detail on all this on the Patreon. The second thing that I was actually held accountable for fits into the dialogue that we are about to have with our next guest. So I'm going to save that for the actual interview with my next guest. Speaking of my next guest, I am pumped to welcome Ariana Amour to the TSAM community. Ariana Amour is a transgender showgirl, spiritual services provider, and sex worker here in New Orleans. In the before times, she performed across stages in New Orleans and all around North America as a burlesque artist, but has gone back to her roots in alternative spirituality and is now also a practicing professional astrologer and tarot card reader. Throughout everything, she has remained consistent in the engagement of holistic personal development and advocacy of issues facing marginalized groups to promote gender, racial, and sexual equity. I am honored, privileged, and delighted to welcome Ari into this space. I hope you enjoy the interview. It's recording, by the way. I may or may not restate it because it sounds great. I listened to it and I was like, but I was like, ooh, I'm really anal about like making sure it sounds like really presentable, like not
no, for
words,
sure.
like pauses where it needs to go. So I might go back and change.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to apologize like ahead of time that like every time I've like done a recording with someone, I've always listened to the recording back, and I've always been like, oh wow, I have this really pseudo Valley Girl inflection of like a lot of likes. And so I apologize in advance. Swim's intelligent.
At least for the people that'll be looking at this on YouTube, you know, I may not do much editing on the likes, but if it ends up being too much, I'll edit it out, make it sound good. I do that, you know, that's part of my
for sure
current job. Hopefully it won't have to be my job anymore, but
yeah, for sure.
So anyway, let's introduce you.
Hi
everybody. This is Ariana Amour.
Hi.
I have known Ari since college.
Yeah.
Did we graduate at the same time? I don't remember.
We were in the same year, but I graduated the following semester because since I switched majors and had like a weird mental health episode sophomore year that kind of delayed things.
Yeah, that's all right. I know like the end of my I had that quarter life crisis situation happen to me like senior year.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think we all go through that though at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you finished, and I'm glad that we're. I mean, I've already talked about Loyola. We went to Loyola, y'all.
We went to Loyola.
What did you go to Loyola for? What did you?
So I was originally at Loyola for voice things.
Yes,
which is why we were like, which is how we all knew each other.
Yes.
But then a lot of things kind of popped up in regards to like my own personal development and my own interests, and I was sort of like,
hold on, Ari, 1 second. I didn't record on my end for the You know what? Whatever. I'm just gonna start recording here. Never mind.
Okay.
That was my fault. You know what? It's whatever. We're gonna fix it. I'm gonna fix it and put it up. Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Oh no. So yeah, I originally started with voice and like being in music, which is how I met you and everyone else that we all love and know. Yeah. But I kind of, in my own personal development, kind of saw that like classical music specifically wasn't what I wanted to like pursue. And around the time I was already working, like really heavily working, not heavily at that point, but like I was working in nightlife already at that point. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of looked at the way we're forced to kind of look for jobs and like kind of how college is supposed to be like a stepping stone to get like a good job.
Yeah.
And I like kind of looked at like how the way the world was at that point, and I was sort of like, well, you know, like most jobs are hiring based off of like applicable skills and just having the competency to like, or like the means to like finish college.
Yeah.
and the wherewithal to finish college. So I was kind of like, well, I'm getting like experience with this job, with like marketing and PR stuff and social media, digital marketing, especially specifically. So why don't I just like kind of study something that I like want to study?
Yeah.
And so I finished Loyola with a bachelor's in philosophy.
Nice.
But I was like very much like I was definitely one of those Loyola kids who were like a few classes away from getting like 5 minors.
Yeah. So you're yeah, a lot, yeah.
Like I would have like I definitely would have been a religious studies minor, a gender studies minor, a sociology minor, and a classics minor had I
Oh my
pursued
God.
other classes.
Yeah.
But then at the end of it all, it was just nope, just finish.
Yeah. Yeah. At that point. Because you honestly, if you really think about it, I think I may have mentioned this on my podcast a couple of episodes ago with someone else from Loyola, but like there's definitely certain majors that you don't have to major in order to succeed in it. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
helpful
exactly.
stepping stone to get like, seeing, but like if you know the right people, you can bypass that. Like
Yeah.
that's how it is. So, well, thanks for giving that background. Do you want to go into detail about some of your nightlife? You don't have to, but I'm curious.
No, totally. So I started out in nightlife in New Orleans when I was around 18
Mm-hmm.
because I was 17 when I first got to Loyola.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of had to wait like half a year to like start doing fun college things.
Yeah.
So I started going out to bars and such, and I went to Oz because Oz was one of the few bars that just like allowed 18-year-olds to enter at the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't really drink at all. Like drinking wasn't really a thing that I cared about. I just wanted to be out. I
Yeah.
just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to dance and dress up and be cute.
Right.
And so basically that led me to going to Oz, and the person that would later become my boss, who was the head of marketing and the director of entertainment there at Oz, Persona Shoulders. You know how I dressed in college. Like I wore
Yeah. Yeah.
like short shorts,
Yeah.
like large tops, stilettos
Yeah. The
to
stilettos
class.
was what I remember specifically.
The
That
stilettos
was
to
like legs,
class.
legs, legs.
Yeah, it's like stilettos to class. And they noticed me at the bar and they asked me if I wanted to help host parties. And I to help host parties, like because they threw theme parties back in that time. And I was like, yeah, I would totally love that. And so I was working for them, like kind of just doing like a pro bono gig of just kind of
Mhm.
like showing up, being cute and
Yeah.
everything. And then I volunteered to help out at a drag queen pageant that they were hosting.
Mm-hmm.
It was the local Miss Gay New Orleans America pageant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I helped organize that, and they saw how like very how my brain worked in regards to like goal orientation and like work ethic
Yeah.
at that point. And so they hired me at that point as their like assistant. And then that grew into me being the person who ran all of Oz's social media like a couple of years in, and then
Mm-hmm.
I became the stage manager of all of their drag shows.
Nice.
And a couple of years into that, so I was doing that well after graduating Loyola. And so about like 6 to 7 years in was when I discovered burlesque in 24, like when I was working at like 2014 was like my first exposure to like real life burlesque.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, I was in a really bad relationship at the time. And it was like very linked with my job. And so I was kind of looking for some kind of an out, not a full out because I love Oz so much, but I needed some sort of separation in like my professional and my personal life. And so burlesque came along, and actually I was actually just talking to someone about it the other day, where I was actually considering going into corporate PR and having like a 9 to 5, but then like burlesque kind of came in, and it was sort of like, oh wow, this is something that I want to do, thanks to another lovely Loyola alumni, Zena Zeitgeist, who brought me into the burlesque fold, and I've been doing burlesque full time ever since then until now.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I wanted to know, because I mean, another reason why I definitely wanted you on here, because I feel that you have like a really elevated sense of self-awareness. Do you think that you have an elevated sense of self-awareness?
So yes, in short, I've always described myself as someone who is painfully self-aware.
Okay. Okay. Do tell.
Because I feel like, especially just like people in general who have intersecting, like loads of intersections of privilege and marginalization, specifically more leaning on the marginalization side, you kind of realize like really early on that you are perceived as the other.
Yeah.
And so like that was made evident to me from a very early age. And I think everyone, especially people who belong to marginalized groups, are painfully self-aware of that fact. I have just been lucky through access to education and access to other resources in my vicinity and immediate surroundings, and my own personal curiosity, to actually learn and seek out the language to describe that experience, and to be able to be like, hey, I feel this way. And that gave me an ability, and in sort of learning the language, it gave me the ability to talk about it.
Yeah.
And to really think about it in an organized way.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks for painfully. That's true though. I like the way that you just said that, and I think also me coming as a person of color, you're correct. I think that even people of color have, or even anyone that's just in a marginalized group, they have a definite.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And it doesn't even like, it just like, and it's across the board. Like, I feel like, for example, like if you grew up poor, you're immediately inundated with messaging of like, when you go out in the world, of questioning like, oh, why don't I have things like these other kids, like especially when you go to schools and such, like, or if you're queer, it's sort of like, oh, like I feel uncomfortable because I see all these people, all these straight people, or if whatever you perceive it to be, these couples, but that's not reflective of like what I want for myself.
Yeah.
Or like for me, like, or for like so many trans people growing up, it's sort of, they see themselves and they look at other people and they're sort of like, they're acting the way that they get to act, but I don't.
Yeah.
And so there's just this overlap. There's so much overlap of all of these different variations of being othered.
Yeah.
That kind of really inform a person. And I think it's I think it takes a very, I'm trying not to be mean.
Go ahead.
I think it takes a really obtuse person to just ignore that and just accept that as just a part of, I mean, yes, we kind of do fall into, not that it's not a part of life, because I feel as though all of us have had that moment or still continue to live that moment of just sort of like, well, that's just how the world is, and that's unfortunate. But it's more so like this sort of, I feel as though they're like, either you kind of accept it and you take it with you and let it inform your decisions, or you try to deny it or ignore it or try to minimize it as much as you possibly can, which I think is definitely the more,
there is a difference.
Which I definitely think there are several people in marginalized groups that try to like, and that's part of where, again, those overlaps come in, because there are a lot of people who have privilege who can hide behind certain social markers to kind of
fit in
and hide behind, which is like definitely like way easier for, say, not to say that it's difficult, but it's like definitely easier for white queer people who are generally presentable by society standards of gender to do that, comparatively to like a brown trans person.
Right.
That's just that's a dichotomy, that particular dichotomy. And because like not only can they hide behind their gender presentation and their whiteness, they can all, but like that's a thing they can hide behind, whereas like a brown trans girl is like, it's like they can hide their transness, but they can't hide their brown.
Exactly. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, and different, and those overlaps, like they have different levels of visibility depending on the person and their circumstances.
Correct. And thankfully, we're actually going to go into this a little bit more a little later on in the podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about Black Trans Lives Matter, and just we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about that. But we're going to first, I want to follow up, because actually Ari, I think, I forget how we even started this conversation, but I don't know if you approached me or I approached you. But
I approached you.
Yes, about like kind of continuing this conversation that we've been having for the last 3 episodes at this point. So we're going to follow up on just what we've been talking about, dealing with implicit biases and sexual preferences towards race, and we're adding transness into this because it also is preferences. Yeah. So I want to talk to me about it, because I want to hear from your perspective. I mean, I've definitely been hearing perspectives from other trans lives, but like I want to hear from you, because I actually know you. And like
so my feelings on preferences, quote unquote, as a whole, is that I definitely feel that there's nothing inherently wrong. Like there's definitely nothing inherently wrong with having preferences.
Yeah.
And I think people get so caught up in the idea that they have preferences and the idea that it is something so individual to a person that they think that like just because it's such an individual, unique thing that's dependent from person to person, doesn't, I feel as though people that believe that just absolves them of any sort of accusation of it being marginalizing in itself or rooted in marginalization, which is false. Because I think people also feel that like preferences are just this thing that's like built into their DNA or their psyche, or that it's something intrinsic to who they are as people. When it's like, no, preferences is both like it's one of those like nature versus nurture, like and nurture things.
Right.
Like preferences are informed by the society around you.
Yes.
And so regardless of your own well intentions, society's messaging is so prevalent. Like we see it in media, we see it in like just social media, especially.
Yeah.
Like we just see the propagation of like what society is putting out to be attractive.
Yeah. Or presentable.
Just presentable. And so it's just a thing that can't be escaped, and it's definitely something that informs our viewpoint, and especially for something as personal as like engaging in sexual and romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Because if we're receiving like messaging about a certain group of people that would make them would deem them undesirable, then like why even bother? Like why engage with
and
that
what
kind
is
of person at all?
What is the main reason why they're considered undesirable? Is like it's like I feel like I don't know if I mean please tell me if I'm wrong, but there seems to be I don't know how to really describe this. There are people that don't know that a person is trans until they tell them, and then all of a sudden things change. Like it's not like they were seeing the person as a person until they found out that they were trans. And it's just like
No, totally. I think there is this fundamental belief still that still persists in society, that trans people is like, that the idea of being trans is kind of like being a full-time drag queen. Is kind of that I feel as though there is this perception of trans people that we believe that our gender is just this costume that we put on to and that this costume is just this thing to and that it's a mask. And so people a lot of times will be quote unquote accepting of trans people or quote unquote tolerant of trans people, but that doesn't necessitate that they believe that they actually are what they say they are.
Yeah, they're not respecting your actual humanity.
Yeah, and I feel as though there's a lot of, and I think there's so much exaggerated attention placed on the physicality of trans people.
Mm-hmm.
And this sort of notion that that genitals specifically are the thing that, like, when it comes to like sexuality preferences, like genitals just all of a sudden become the marker, when that's not necessarily the only thing. Because if you think about it, sort of just like, it's like if genitals were like the real marker of like what made people attracted to each other, most men don't really like vulvas. Like they want to get in it, but they don't respect it.
Right.
They're 75% of the time they're grossed out by it.
They don't know how to use it either.
And they don't know how to use it. Like, it's like, and honestly, specific men and cis men, cis straight men are obsessed with dicks.
Yeah, they are. They're more obsessed than cis women are.
Cis women are like, yeah. I think that's just a trend with men, like gay or straight. It's just like dicks. Like regardless of whether you want,
like,
whether you want to engage with a dick or not, you're like, like just admit y'all are obsessed with dicks.
Yeah,
fine, it's okay. I don't need y'all to like want to suck a dick.
Right. But the glorification of a dick, though, like literally,
Yeah.
you are correct. There is a glorification, definitely more than the glorification of a vulva, vagina, vulva, whatever. Yeah.
And that kind of also, I think part of the thing, I can't speak for trans men specifically. I do know that trans men face a very specific kind of transphobia from women specifically, because there is like TERFs or trans exclusionary radical feminists, and so being a trans man who is attracted to women, I definitely see how that issue of transphobia can pop up in those spaces, but I can't speak to that experience myself. Yeah. For me, being a person who is unfortunately attracted to men, also a person also attracted. I'm bisexual, so
yeah.
Okay, my main attraction is towards men. But the people who tend to engage with me sexually and romantically, well, I'm also aromantic, so sexually, is men. And in my experience, and in the experience of many trans women that I know, the men who are attracted to trans women are straight men. And that's not some weird anomaly, but yet it's really funny because so many men message me when like they like match with me on dating apps and everything. And by the way, like I just put it out there, like in the open. Like I just want to weed out the trolls immediately, even though I've also learned that like 75% of men don't read dating profiles. I think 75% of people don't read the profiles.
I do, but that's just me, because I really want to know, like, I'm really choosy about who I decide to do anything with. I need to also know, like, I mean, I have a lot of things that people have said, like I've said in the past, like my dating profile lets people know, yo, I'm already in a committed relationship. This is
for sure.
Yo, like,
so. Yeah, so for me, I'm just like, it's like, hey, I'm trans. If you don't like it, swipe left. Like, immediately from the get-go. And there's a lot of discourse on that particular issue, on the nature of like disclosure and all of that stuff. But for me personally, I just like, I've been living openly trans since it was popular. Like since before, like in the early 2010s, before the rise of Caitlyn Jenner and like all of that.
Yeah.
And like also like Chaz Bono and all of that. But like in my experience, it's like men have always messaged me and just be like, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm straight. And I'm like,
okay. So why are you talking?
It's like, yeah, I know, because obviously you're straight, because you're talking to me, because you're attracting, because I am a woman.
Yeah.
We're attracted to women.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just boggles their brain that they believe that this attraction to trans women is somehow this anomaly, that they are this anomaly, when it's like, no, boo, like you're attracted to women, you see me as an attractive woman. And I think part of that really comes down to the fact that society really limits the way that men are allowed to explore sexuality. Because comparatively, like, because I actually just like, because if you think about it, like, even though queer women and women who love women are stigmatized on a completely different level, on a completely different like playing field, but however, it's just like women, but in a weird backhanded way, because that's like perceived as like hot,
Yeah.
by men, which is its own problem. Women are able to like explore their sexuality without it being some sort of detriment to
Right.
how they identify.
Yeah.
Whereas like when men all of a sudden want to explore their sexuality in any sort of way that is outside of just their penis going inside of a vagina,
Right.
they are immediately like, are you gay?
Right.
What's wrong with you? And
Right.
it's like, well, no, there's a lot of nuance to be unpacked here.
Vagina owners have all different types of holes as well, and so do penis owners, and everybody should be equally able to use those holes as best and not like get judged for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so with like in regards to trans women specifically, there's this weird thing that people believe that it's just trans women are it fundamentally comes down to the fact that like the society has not moved past the fact that they still don't believe that trans women are women.
Yeah.
Like that's what it really boils down to, is the fact that like it's just like baseline transphobia. It's like you don't believe that trans men are men and you don't believe that trans women are women.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what language you want to put it to like kind of flower that up of just sort of like, oh, I respect your identity. Blah 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, you can act and dress however you want. But there's always that like like that under the layer like
yeah,
caveat
there's always a
of
butt
like,
in there somewhere. Like
yeah, like there's always that caveat. And so when it comes to like preferences, quote unquote, in regards to like trans people, I find that like it's kind of similar to I feel as though a lot of conversations regarding preference like lack a lot of nuance, because there's always the two sides of like people who are like, it's just a preference, it's not racist or transphobic, or the people that are like, this is utter racism and this is transphobic and you're racist if you don't want to date such and such and you're transphobic if you don't want to date such and such. And I'm kind of here sort of like, y'all do know there's like a middle ground that accepts both, right? Because it's sort of like, yes, it is a preference, you are correct, and there is nothing intrinsically wrong with having preferences. However, two things that are the real issue here is, number one, where did those preferences come from? Most people are not aware of where their preferences come from. What is the messaging that surrounds you? What do you actually know about these people, or they're like the social groups that they belong to? Do you have a shifted view of that? Do you have a more fetishistic or idolized view of that group? What's going on there? And then second, is like the expression of that preference. Because here's the thing that people I don't think understand. Excluding a whole group of people is not a preference.
yeah, it's not.
Because a preference is literally like you create like a hierarchy of like what you like down a list from like thing you most like to thing you least like. However, the thing with a preference though is that you would still, if that was still an option made to you, you would still go for it.
Yeah.
Like it's just sort of like, because like really in a preference situation it's sort of like, yeah, you could like you can prefer dating Black people to like Middle Eastern people, but that doesn't mean that by definition that doesn't mean you wouldn't date a Middle Eastern person.
Right.
If you don't want to date a Middle Eastern or a Black person, just be straight up and be like, you don't want to date a Black person or a Middle Eastern person. That'll mark you as someone who may have racist tendencies. But at least that's the truth.
Yeah. Exactly. I'd rather someone
because that's the thing. It's just sort of like I'm just sort of like exclusionary language is not preferential language, and with trans people specifically, the thing with like I don't believe that people who don't want to date trans people are like utter vehement transphobes. I
Yeah.
don't believe that. Like, yes, are there people that are like that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think the lay person, my personal situation is, why do you constantly bring attention to the fact that you don't want to date certain groups of people?
Hello.
Like, why do you have to make it a point to exclude certain groups of people from your dating pool? That's where the accusations of racism, that's where the accusations of transphobia can be levied toward.
Exactly.
Because
Especially
then, like, if
bringing it
because
up.
it's like if you have like, because it's like, sure, like you could have racially biased preferences and you can not want to date trans people, but you could totally not tell anyone and it wouldn't be really a problem. That's just more of a personal thing that you should work on and should be a thing between you and spirit.
Yeah.
Like, that's not like, that's like that's when it's a personal thing. But when you like go out into the world and are on dating apps being like, I don't date blah 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 blah, or like you just tell people like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't date blah 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 blah, it's sort of like,
Yeah. Your options, or God, I don't know how to like describe it, but like you're basically limiting yourself.
you're limiting yourself, number one. But number two, it's like, for me, when I talk about like I go over all of the different arguments that people make about like trans women that are levied towards trans women, and a lot of them really come down to, it's like, oh well, what if a person like wants to have kids? Adoption is
You
a
got adoption
thing.
and find someone to be your
Also give it like 25 years, that medical science might have something by that point. Like, they're like all of these things are just, people are just like, it's just, honestly, it's just like vehement, obstinate, like, just admit like you don't like trans people, and that's okay. I
just
don't
say
need
it
you to
out
like,
front.
just say it out loud. Like, I don't need this like go around shit.
Just
And
be
also,
upfront and
just be upfront. And like, honestly, like, I really want for us as a people, as a collective, as a society, to understand that when we are using these kind of terms to describe oppressive behavior or oppressive mindsets, we are not that like, that is like, it's not, it shouldn't be perceived as an attack on like the human character.
yeah.
It's like we're pointing out flaws in your logic and your ability to view people as people.
Right. And
Like, that's like, I mean, yes, that can speak a lot to your character for sure. It's just more like, I think people get so caught up because when people are called out for racist behavior or transphobic behavior, people are like immediately assuming that people are calling them bad people.
yeah.
And it's sort of like, we're giving you the opportunity to not be a bad person.
Yeah.
And
Mostly
it's like,
admitting again, this is July, self-accountability month. Be self-accountable for the fact that you don't know
yeah,
everything. You need to learn more. Like, that is literally it. We're not saying that because you have quote unquote preferences. Like, we are basically just telling you, yo, you need to own up to it and, maybe like hold yourself accountable as to why you have them, and not just say, oh, it's just because, like, and just kind of shoo it off, because that's not holding yourself accountable at all.
yeah. And also, like, as just like kind of speaking to the experience of being a trans woman, I'm just sort of like, a lot of people, I feel as though like most of it has to, like, obviously it's the dick obsession. It's the like, it's just this fascination with the idea of like, how can a person be straight if there's another dick involved? Ugh, it must be gay. And it's just sort of like, we're missing a lot of nuance here.
Yeah. Thankfully,
There's a lot of like misinformation about functionality of genitals, especially when a person's like on hormones.
right.
There's a lot of misinformation about like just sexual, like just sexual behavior in general, because I'm sort of like, okay, and yes, this is like people do perceive this particular thing as gay, but it's sort of like, isn't a man who gets pegged by a woman still straight? When it's a woman, it's still a
Right.
woman.
Right.
It's like that's basically the same thing that's happening here. It's like
But
you're engaging with a woman.
Yeah.
But
Well,
people don't want to view it that way. People are like way too stuck on the physical, and it's just sort of like, look, it's like, look, sweetie, I don't know what to tell you. I'm a woman. Men are attracted to me because I'm a woman, and it's definitely not gay. Like, it's not gay men who are primarily attracted to me, because I'm clearly not a man. So it's like, I can only speak to my experience. To all you men out there who are sitting there being like, I could never date a trans person, I just want to posit to you why you would discount such a large array of people that spans body type, ethnicity, political standpoint, certain genital status, let alone. Because did y'all forget that there are trans women out there who have vulvas?
Right.
Like, those, they exist.
They do.
And so, and varying degrees of like presentation, and it's sort of like, it kind of boggles me. It's sort of like, you really think that you can't find one person from this group, or a couple of people from this group, that you wouldn't even remotely find attractive?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I think I was also talking about this with Bo on the other episode, but like, there's a lot of people that are quote unquote, or they'll normally go for people that are more passing in their transness, or like, their womanhood or manhood or whatever. And that's also like something like people, like, I guess some people feel like they're tricked or something like that, which is,
oh yeah, no, the trick, the surprise is like a very large trope, and that's like that's another like message that's like propagated through media. If any of y'all have not seen it yet, go watch Disclosure on Netflix.
I was about to say that.
Go watch Disclosure on Netflix.
This whole conversation will make so much more sense if you go.
Will make so much if you watch Disclosure on Netflix, because it really just tackles the fact that like this trope of like the trans surprise has been like a trope to like essentially dehumanize trans women specifically. Because it's just sort of like, it's like, aha, we've revealed that this woman is actually a man. But it's like, no. It's like, no. What you've revealed is, yes, this person may have a dick. They may or may not, they may still be a woman.
Our genitals should not that should not identify who we are as.
No, and honestly, like, I don't blame people if like, it's like, if you're gonna sit here and be like, I have a genital preference, and it's like, okay, so if you're a person who likes vulvas, are you also attracted to trans men? Exactly. Oh, you only like dicks? Are you also attracted to trans women? The answer would most likely, unless you're like a bisexual or pansexual or polysexual person, or someone that falls under that umbrella of identities, probably not.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like,
they want the perceived genital to match the perceived presentation of that genital, if that makes any sense. Or like societal.
The societal norm of like what they perceive that like the person belongs to that set of genitals is.
Right.
And I think,
but even in that case, trans women, like, how they know if they have, they had the surgery, or like, or they have vulvas, like, whatever. It's such the conversation. Oh my gosh, y'all! Like, it could go on and on. Like, it's. But I actually wanted to kind of talk about, before we get into it, actually, while we're on it, not only Disclosure, but I just finished Pose, and I think that also helps too. It was I just finished it like maybe 2 weeks ago.
Pose is so beautiful. Everyone deserves a poppy.
Yes.
Everyone deserves a poppy. And that was like a really beautiful moment too, because it's sort of like you're seeing on screen for the first time, like,
real like stories.
like a real story, and it's like you're seeing, especially in regards to this conversation, you're seeing like a straight man like have a short grappling with what this could mean for him as a man, but then kind of just going full speed ahead into like, I love you and want to be with you. And I was like, this hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
This hurts. And I'm like, I'm very thankful for like the men in my life who have never like treated me like shittily and have never like quote unquote like hid me. Because that's been like, I mean, that's like the constant theme of like a lot of trans women's lives, of like getting to a point of constantly like being like a hidden situation.
Right.
And like sometimes you just get to a point where it's like, no, I respect myself. I'm not gonna let myself be this sort of secret because I'm not this thing to be ashamed of. Now I will now if that trait or that man be shameful, yes, you should hide them, ma'am, but you yourself should not be hidden from the world.
Exactly. Huh. Jeez, yeah, they need to hide, not you.
Not you, yeah.
But
and they do be hiding. They do be hiding. They think they are so slick.
But it sucks because it's like y'all are the ones that are basically, you know, showing up and showing out and like being all around the place and showing who you are, and they can't. So it's almost like there's so many layers to it. Again,
yeah,
Lordy.
Mm-hmm. But overall, I just kind of want to close this part off, just to kind of say like there's nothing wrong with not wanting to date trans people.
Yeah.
I just want to say that, like, just flat out, like, you are, like, I don't believe, at least for me, like, I don't believe that you are a vehement, bigot, transphobic person. I do just invite all of you who are listening to this to just kind of question, what is the messaging that you've received about trans people? Do you actually believe trans people are who they say they are?
Mm-hmm.
And if that is the case, then, but you still don't find any sort of way to be attracted to them, again, it's sort of like, what are the kind of factors that are contributing to that? And just think about it, because that's like really the thing. It's sort of like, whether it be based on gender, or being cis or trans, like having a quote unquote genital preference, or having a racial preference. It's all about, like, again, being aware,
self-aware,
and understanding, like, your shit is not made in a vacuum. You are an yes, you are an individual with your own wants and desires, but your wants and desires don't come out of just out of thin air. Like, they're incrementally and systemically, like, built on top of.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm so happy you're on this. I really am.
Yeah, I'm so happy to talk to you.
Oh man. So before we get into our next actually we still have a few things to just talk about briefly. So I was letting them know at the beginning that I was held accountable twice within the last 2 weeks of my break. The first one was just for, especially if you're like on internets like me, I'm on internets all the time. And normally sometimes I will get into arguments online with people that I don't know, but I'm normally just trying to, at this point, the person that has posted it, someone has come in, and at least in my instance, it was like somebody that I perceived was trying to counter the argument with something problematic. And so I was like, I said something, and then the person that actually originated the post said, yo, you can step back because this person is like, I trust them, like, it's okay. And I was like, ooh, let me actually step back, because
Yeah.
that person knows them better than I do. And I have to remember that. And I have to be mindful. Like, if I'm going to comment on somebody's post or like any other person's platform, I need to comment as myself and try not to comment on what other people are saying. At least for right now, because I'm definitely at that point, because there's just been so much that's been going on where, like, I need to stick to what I want to say and not reply to anyone else at this time. So I got checked on that, but it was also because I checked that same person like a week before about doing the same thing on my page. So they were just like, okay, you just did the same thing on mine. So I'm letting you know. And I was like, ooh, thank you. But the second thing I was definitely checked on, and I think it was a collective, because I had the dating preference survey that I recently did for the Self-Aware Millennial listeners. I had the gender identity, and I put male and female, and I got a comment saying, it's not that, it is man and woman. And I was like, and I was like, dang, okay, because I was really trying to be like stupid and inclusive to everybody, and then I got the whole gender thing wrong. So now I know, and like I'll never mess it up ever again, because it makes sense, especially after talking to you too.
Yeah, and also like I think also just kind of to keep in the mind, it's like, think of the discomfort you may personally feel when you hear a man just refer to women as females.
Yeah.
Like think back on that. Yeah. As like kind of like your guide. It's like gut feeling, like when a man or anyone really just refers to women as females. Right. It's like, why? Yeah. Like,
and I think about it, I know,
literally, when I see that, like specifically from a man, it's like, oh, you're probably also the type of man that calls women bitches.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, yeah, that's another conversation for another podcast. We will get to that, I promise you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to talk about before we go into like our next segment. Well, not segment, but like our last thing I think we're supposed to be talking about before we go into our next segment. I just wanted to kind of, for my listeners, because everyone knows that I've been out there at the rallies and the protests, and we've been really, I mean, it's primarily about the Black Lives Matter movement, but we have been incorporating everybody into this movement and making sure that everyone is represented that is Black, and that includes Black trans lives. And so the Black Trans Lives Matter movement, basically what's been going on is there's a disproportionate amount of Black trans lives that are being killed pretty much like at a alarming rate. And it's not being publicized nearly as much, and it should be, because, I mean, also, I forgot her name already, but she spoke at this last rally. She was talking about how like the survival rate, or like the age that most Black trans women are, like, they're 35. That is the age that, and I was, when I heard that, I was just like, this.
Was it Mariah or Milan?
Milan. It was Milan.
Okay.
Yes. She was out there and she talked about that, and I that made me angry. I was like fumed inside, but I had to remember to compose myself, because I was just so happy to see a Black trans woman talking to everybody and everyone showing her the respect and the humanity that she deserves, especially with everything that I know. I could just tell from just the way that she was speaking, the way she carries herself. She's been through so much. And so I'm just like, this person needs to be protected, and y'all need to listen to her. And like, I could tell, like, even with her speech that she had, it was just so much. It's just so much backstory. It's one of those things where it's like, you can only say so much for that amount of time. It's almost like, okay, I need to see about like finding more about your story, or just like hearing more about you, or like inviting you to coffee, or just something, just to help me get to know this person more. Because just through that speech, I was like, I want to know more. I want to know more about this person's ideals, this person, like what they find important in their lives, like who they deem, you know, like who their favorite artists are, and like everything. Like, I don't know. I was just very, I wouldn't say intrigued, but like I was definitely, I felt like a
Invested.
pull. I felt like a motivational pull.
There was like a desire to like want to like invest in that person.
Exactly. So, and I believe that she's over House of Tulip. Is that correct?
Yes, her and Mariah, we're talking about Milan Cherie.
Yes.
And she and Mariah Moore are the co-presidents of the collective that is House of Tulip, which is, for those of you who do not know, is a trans-led nonprofit organization that wishes to create long-term housing initiatives to provide long-term and permanent housing for homeless trans people here in Louisiana.
Yes, and I believe they have a whatchamacallit going on right now. I don't know the word, but they've raised
GoFundMe.
Yeah, they have a GoFundMe. I couldn't think of the word. And they've raised nearly $300,000 towards that. And I was just like, damn.
Yeah.
So they got that so far. And I mean, obviously more money, more funds help. So I'm gonna put it in my show notes. So I'll have a link to the organization if you would like to support it. Am I missing any other organizations or that are
there is the LGBT Community Center of New Orleans.
Okay.
They are the president of the organization is another Black trans woman, whose name is Saria St. Clair.
Mm-hmm.
She is wonderful as well. And she is definitely looking for she's definitely hoping to try and figure out space for the center and to actually from my understanding raise funds so that there can be a space for that, because there isn't an actual real physical there is a space, but it's not, it's a shared space from my understanding. Mm-hmm. So I definitely if you can also look into the LGBTQ Community Center of New Orleans and find out more.
Cool. I'll link them as well in the show notes so that people can have access to know where it is. And the last thing I wanted to talk about quickly is I just recently been following and have just kind of been in interaction and passing with Qween Amor as well. She has started a petition for LGBTQ rights Protection Act. So I'm just going to read what she wrote, but it's basically a petition for protection. I mean, clearly everything I just literally what the title says. I'm just going to read it. This is what she said. As we move forward into 2020, I believe that as a transgender woman of color, witnessing horrific acts of violence against our community, it is time to make a stand and acknowledge this violence as irrefutably unacceptable. This violence is coming disproportionately it's affecting the trans community in a way that makes navigating society and accessing vital resources such as healthcare and education almost impossible. And then she names the murdered trans women this year. I believe there's 9, 10, 11. No, never mind. There's a lot. Never mind. This is a whole thing. So there's a lot. And she also says no one should demand justice for the lives lost to. Not only should we demand justice for the lives lost due to transphobic violence, but we must also introduce legislation that protects us and our rights. She is creating this petition in hopes of adopting a bill called the LGBTQ plus Protections Act. And then she goes into the initiatives. And if you want to check out it, just go to it's change.org, or you can actually follow Qween Amor on the Instagram. Qween Amor, it's actually Qween Amor. Mm-hmm. And just go to her Linktree, and it's the first thing that you'll see on that link, and you can go ahead and sign it. I think right now, let me look at the signatures there. She's trying to get to 10,000. She's at like 7,500. So she's getting there. So if you are listening to this, please, I'll also link it. I'll link it. How about that? I will link it to make it easy for you. So, yeah. But Qween, if everyone also, Qween is like just a very big social justice warrior and everything that is happening here in New Orleans. You've probably seen her. She's the one twerking on the police cars and just like being completely in her element out there. You will know her when you see her. That's all I will say.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true.
Yeah. And I had the privilege of dancing with her in front of the mayor's house a couple of weeks ago. So I was just like, yes, this is great. So anyway, all right.
Wait, hold on. Before we move on, can I actually like run to the bathroom? Like cut this out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
One moment.
Yeah.
One moment.
We guys, I'm gonna pause so that y'all don't have to actually know what I'm a while she using the restroom. I can talk a little bit more about, let's see. Well, you know what I'll do? Yeah, I'm gonna talk about what we're actually about to go into. So we are going to be talking about, so, you know, a lot of millennials love astrology, especially in these day and age. I mean, like, even as I was growing up, I kind of remembered being, you know, I knew what my sign was. I knew that I was a Sagittarius. By the way, I was born on December 17th, if anyone astrologer wise is, you know, wanting to know more about me, but we'll actually go into it a little bit more. Sorry, I was talking about like my December. Oh wait, that's right, you can't hear me.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I realized you couldn't hear me when you walked in, but no, I was letting them know about my birthday. I'd said I was born December 17th. I'm a Sagittarius.
Yeah.
And before, okay, so I'm gonna go back now because the reason why I'm telling y'all this is that Ari is actually she's a practicing, as I said in the beginning, the intro, that she is a astrologer and psychic. So is that correct? Did I say it right?
I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as like a psychic.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. But like astrologer, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that was all I was really gonna say. What does astrology mean to you specifically? Like what does it embody?
So the best definition that I've come across for astrology is it's the study of celestial alignments in relation to earthly events.
Mm-hmm.
And so for millennia, human beings have looked up to space and the sky for signs of what it could possibly mean for the world. And it's just been like people have been like documenting like these patterns and these sort of significant things that like describe what could possibly happen in the world. And it's been used as a tool of divination, but more recently, more definitely a tool of like personal development and like exploration.
Cool. Sweet. And so yeah, we're going to talk about your psychicness and how you don't consider yourself like a psychic, but
yeah,
like you can't like completely predict the future, but you do feel like
I think the term psychic just gets like loaded with a lot of like weird media shit.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like, I think a lot of people have like access to like psychic gifts and like human intuition in itself is like pretty psychic.
Mm-hmm.
But in regards to sort of the kind of nature of psychic gifts, I personally wouldn't like describe what I do with astrology as like being a psychic.
Cool. So what would you like, what's a better way of you describing it then? Like for you, like what would you consider?
I would consider it more like I put it under the rung of what I call spiritual service provider. It's more so what I like kind of like to prefer to like, it falls under that line of like astrology, tarot, like herbalists.
Yeah.
Reiki energy workers.
Mhm.
Um,
I like spiritual service provider. It sounds
yeah.
official.
Like people who sell products that are associated with their craft, with their witchcraft,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I think those all kind of fall under this like kind of umbrella term of sort of like going out into the realm of people who who use spirituality or sort of spiritual notions to help people.
Okay. Cool. So let's talk about a little bit like why astrology is so popular amongst millennials right now. Especially right now.
Yeah. So so there's both like an empirical reason, and like I also like can see like in the astrology like why this is a thing also. And they all relate to each other. So we're like the generation who, like, first of all, like as a generation, we grew up, we were the first group of people to find community on the internet.
Yeah.
And we were the first group of people to use the internet as a way to connect with other people.
Yeah.
And like a lot of that connection has to do with shared similarities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as a generation, we're often attracted to ways of relating to each other.
Yeah.
And also we're like, on top of that, like people, like on the basis of trying to like find community with other people, we're also a generation that's like that has like a really deep fascination with like figuring out who we are.
Yeah.
And like deep like exploration of self. Like we're the generation that like that invented the internet personality quiz.
Yeah, that's so true. I forgot about the things. Oh my
Like we're
gosh.
we're the generation that like literally took every possible BuzzFeed quiz to tell us what fucking Disney princess we are.
Yeah.
We're the generation that like grew up like asking people like, what's your Hogwarts house?
Right. I know the big one also right now is besides like I don't know, for some reason I like the love languages quiz, but I don't know if that's like a millennial thing or not.
Yeah.
That's been around for a bit. But
Yeah, but like I think like kind of these like more popular like kind of more
Enneagram.
like psychologically grounded kind of studies of like love languages, Enneagrams, Myers-Briggs.
Yeah. So yeah, again, I think it's just we trying to find ways of again connecting with each other and like relating to each other in a way.
Relating to each other, but also like distinguishing ourselves. Like there's
Right.
that's
and
a
maybe
two-part.
also knowing more about yourself through these, I don't know, like maybe tapping into it more. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely with like the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs type things, there's definitely like a lot more field of study to look at. And also like I also fundamentally believe that we as a generation, and the astrology also reflects this, of we are a generation that kind of looked out into the world and saw all of these things being revealed to us, like all of these sort of misconceptions that we had about the world and all of these sort of abuses
Through the internet,
and trauma. Really? Yeah, through the internet, like these abuses and these traumas, and so many things were exposed to us at a young age. And like from that point, there was like there's this immediate going inward and like trying to figure out like, okay, but where do I fit into all of this?
Yeah.
And then on top of that too, there's this notion of just sort of like, this is like kind of prevalent through like a lot of different groups of people in the past, but especially now it's very marked because I feel as though a lot of the times when a group of people feels that they're like failed by the structures in society, there's a natural inclination to seek out an alternative structure that gives you some sense of like purpose or some sense of meaning in life. And astrology like gives that, but because just astrology in itself is its own like structure and like has its own like kind of system that works with itself to like kind of be like, this is what astrology says you are. And so it allows people to kind of, and that's like also like why people like seek out like alternative spirituality or like kind of more individualistic approaches to spirituality, because they feel that like like traditional institutions of spirituality have like failed them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what would you consider are some misconceptions about your practice and just astrology in general?
Number one is that I think a lot of the most comments dissenting about astrology tend to come from the place of sort of like, it's like, well, like, that's dumb. Like, the stars don't make things happen. And it's sort of like, yes, yes, to be fair, there are lots of astrologers out there who do believe that there is some credence to the idea that the planets and the stars have like effect on human life. But the study in itself doesn't believe that. It doesn't run on that premise. The premise is that we've observed events on Earth, and we looked up at the stars and the sky and the planets and have been like, this is what's happening in the sky during this event. And then we're going to record, hey, maybe if it falls into this configuration again, we'll probably see this kind of event happen again. Mm-hmm. And it's been proven over millennia that like certain things have proven to, by like a sort of pattern synthesis kind of thing, that this is what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's not a causal relationship. It's a correlation rather than a cause.
Cool.
I also think other misconceptions about astrology. I also, in my practice specifically, I like to dispel the idea of people like only going off of their sun sign.
Is the sun sign like for me would be considered Sag?
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is that like I can't speak for every astrologer, but for me specifically, when I study astrology, I like to think of everyone as like as a manifestation of like the zodiac as a whole. Mm-hmm. Because the whole zodiac is a system that works with each other, and we're like in our natal chart, we have all 12 signs of the zodiac in there. We may not have planets or celestial points that like fill up the entire chart, but like these planets still move and can still act up in
it's still a part of your full, I guess, sun sign in some way. Like it all works.
Yeah, and also like I also like sun sign astrology really only came to be popular like in the wider practice of astrology in like the late 18th century and like really solidified in like the 70s.
Gotcha. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so for a long time, like the sun sign was like, especially given like the rise of like what I like to call like pop astrology, or like what I like to call meme astrology. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people like have become like very like that's where a lot of people's focus lies on, is like the sun sign portion, which is why a lot of people also don't like astrology, because a lot of people like don't identify with their sun sign. It is sort of like, well, your sun sign may not even be like number one, like your sun sign might not even be talking about you in the chart. Mm-hmm. That's a possibility,
right?
And also like for people, it's like it's a lot easier to track to like just know your sun sign, because not all of us are practicing astrologers with tables and information laying around about when planets go into certain signs,
right?
So like no one yeah, exactly. So like it's easy to track your sun sign.
Yeah. Well, I've been told by numerous folks that I'm like a true Sagittarius And I want to know why. I mean, here's the thing. I have not said that. I've been told by other people.
Yeah.
Can you possibly tell me why other people are perceiving me as a true? I mean, not that I'm not, but I am one. But like,
so for me, so looking at your chart specifically,
oh wait, hold on. By the way, my chart, y'all, will be on my Instagram for Self Aware Millennial, in case y'all are following along and want to even see what the chart looks like. Okay, continue.
Yeah. So if you look at the chart, you see like all of these cluster of planets at like the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and that it's like under that sigil that like looks like an arrow.
Let me get this. One second.
Yeah, pull up the reference chart.
Yeah. All right, I got it. By the way, you guys, yeah, I don't know if you can really see it very well, but
yeah,
you can't really see it that well. But again, it'll be on the Instagram. So yeah. So you said there's a lot. Oh, I see. Yeah, there's a lot of planets on the bottom.
There's a lot of planets at the bottom, and like in that particular slice of the pie that is like the zodiac. So that's the Sagittarius portion of your chart.
Okay.
And so the reason, so like part of the reason why you may feel it, like, so like for me when reading your chart, before we look at that, I think it's really important to talk about like the notion of, I think more people should know their rising signs.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're rising, because I feel as though the rising sign is what really makes the astrology more personal. Because the rising sign sets up immediately like the direction of the chart. Like it sets the chart in motion because it marks the beginning of the chart. Okay. And so when you're looking at a chart, it'll normally like that, what is called the ascendant degree, which is the part of the chart that either says like AS or AC. In different charts, it's like either AS or ASC or AC.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be designated as like your rising sign.
Okay. I don't know what sign that is, but I see it, the AS.
Yeah. And so for you specifically, so the rising sign is going to be the part of the chart that really is probably going to be the most representative of like you living life. Because here's the thing with the natal chart is that like the natal chart shouldn't be, at least from the perspective that I come from in astrology, because there are many different traditions and ways of looking at the natal chart. From where I come from, I'm coming from with the natal chart, I believe that the natal chart is meant to act as sort of what we like to consider in traditional astrology, like the promise of the life to be lived.
Mm.
And so it's like, it speaks to the potential of the life. Gotcha. And so with the rising sign is supposed to be representative of the point in your, like literally at the time of your birth. That was the moment that you became an independent being in this world, which is why we ask for exact birth time, because we're like, we want to know what that proper moment when you were actually like, you had like your first breath and were outside of your mother's womb.
Cool.
And so like, that's going to be the most representative point of like who you are, because it sets up the first house of the chart, the first slice of the chart.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you, you have your ascendant in Virgo.
Mm.
And so the rising sign, the rising sign really speaks to sort of more so like how you consciously move, your disposition towards like consciously moving in the world, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So what that says about you with the Virgo, it says that like there's this disposition towards the way you move around the world revolving around being as efficient and optimal in every task that you undertake.
Yeah.
And that there's like a striving for like perfection or as close to perfection as you can. And that like can lead to having personality traits that may lead you be like critical or selective or discerning.
Mm-hmm.
And this also lends itself because the Virgo energy is that energy of like mutable earth. It's moldable. It wants to be able, you may find yourself adapting yourself to varying scenarios in your life in order for you to work out how you can best operate in that area of life, or like where you're at. And then you have so you have Jupiter in the rising and in that first house as well, which is the one that looks like a 4.
Yeah.
So that's like Jupiter is the planet of a lot. It's the planet of like kind of representing the parts of your life that will be quantitatively or qualitatively like a lot of. And so this kind of speaks to like that you may find yourself in life having like very large aspirations or wanting to accomplish a lot. But because it's in Virgo specifically, because of the large scope of the ideas, you may find yourself way too like overwhelmed by the personal details and the minutia of accomplishing those goals, which can like lead to like procrastination behaviors or like an inability or anxiety to even start to begin projects. And the fostering of those aspirations are really informed by your strong ties to like your roots.
Cool.
And also like the building of close relationships throughout the life.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. And so like the Sagittarius bit actually becomes really important because the ruling planet, each sign has a ruling planet. And the ruling planet of Virgo is Mercury. And Mercury is sitting in that place with Sagittarius with all of those other planets.
Oh.
And so so like what the Mercury element shows there is that it's sitting in your 4th house, which is the house of like family, your early like life experiences that really molded you, and your home, whether it be the home that you grew up in or the home that you are trying to build and live in now. And so Mercury being here shows that there's like a strong, and with all of those things, all of those planets kind of together, they're all like working in tangent because they're all like very closely connected together. And so it shows that there's like a strong identification with home and the values that you were raised with.
Gotcha.
As well as an immense pride about where you came from. It was probably, and I wrote notes here, it was probably evident at an early age that you were very expressive and had a big personality.
Yep.
And you were possibly very chatty and rambunctious as a child.
Yeah. Yep.
And it also kind of says that like and it's also like noted that like your social nature and your big personality would play a larger role in life as you became an adult, because it would factor into not only your big aspirations and big ideas, but also into like your chosen career path and public persona.
Yep.
And so we also have I'm just going to read you like what I like the notes that I wrote down like on that particular Sagittarius placement.
Gotcha.
So we also have like notes on like how your early life is most likely marked by lots of activity and buzz due to things happening in shared spaces in your neighborhood and immediate surroundings. These activities in early life really fed and nurtured you and inspired the cultivation of the skills and talents that really identify you in the world and allow you to hold your own. And also there's a very primary motivation to really go and be out in the world and to spread those talents and ideas. But there may have been a point in your early life where you felt stuck and isolated, either because you did not have access to those spaces with those activities, or there were difficult times where you had to take a step back and play a support role and couldn't focus on what you wanted to do. But however, like once you were free and independently able to move about in the world, that was when you were able to really shine so that you could build the vision of like the home that you wanted to have for yourself, but also like maintaining like strong ties to your roots.
That ain't the truth. Oh my gosh. It's so true though. Like that's literally why I have this platform
Yeah.
to do that. So yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I would love to like know more about like just understanding the signs and the symbols and stuff at some point. We obviously don't have to do that all today, and I'll probably just do my own research, but I think this is just a
Yeah.
nice chart. Thank you
Yeah.
for
And I definitely like posting like a lot of like teaching content, like a lot of like educational talk content on like on my Instagram and Twitter
Mhm.
and stuff like that. But I mean, we can like continue going on with your chart if you want to.
Well, how about we do this? We can continue going on. We'll do it. We'll put it on my Patreon. We'll put the
Okay,
rest on the
perfect. Oh
Patreon.
yeah, right.
But what we can do currently right now is actually I'll just cut it. No, you know what? No. We'll do that after we finish the rest of this, and then we
Okay,
can go back to
we'll get back
and
we'll get
have
back
that
into
as an
that.
actual another segment, which will be great. Oh, that'll be
Okay.
exciting.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about your you just started Divine Literacy.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So, divine literacy is like kind of what I've decided to like professionally call like my practice. And so that's basically I offer tarot and astrology services for
Mm-hmm.
people, which include like like obviously like tarot card readings and natal chart consultations, where I basically give people like interpretations of their birth chart. And then once we do that, people can have services for me about like basically like kind of giving an astrological forecast for the year,
Oh, cool.
and also like kind of looking at like different techniques in astrology to kind of determine like how like what the year looks like for you,
Yeah.
and sort of looking at like kind of transits of planets to kind of determine like these are the energies that you'll be working with,
Yeah.
etc. And so, and also like I do offer like kind of just like teaching type things where like if people want to learn more about astrology, like on a like more like deeper educational level, like they can message me and like ask for that service, and I'll be willing to like kind of give like a one-on-one tutoring session on it. And
Yeah.
also I post a lot of like I also am posting a lot of just general content about astrology and sort of like what I find to be interesting about astrology, and also like posting like kind of collective tarot card readings on there as well.
Awesome. Well, you guys, if you want, please follow Divine Literacy. Oh Lord, I cannot speak today. Divine Literacy on Instagram. It's at divine.literacy.
Yep.
That is where you will find everything Ari and everything that she just kind of briefly, and I mean briefly told me about my own chart. Y'all can also find more about even yourselves. Like, feel free. Like, I'm pretty sure you're on Instagram like all the time. So like,
Oh yeah, I am on.
it's
I too live on the internet. You know
yeah.
why? It's rent free.
um. So please follow her there and check her out. See if you need your service done, because I mean, obviously, I think that it's very interesting, and I think it helps me personally know more about who I am, and makes me more confident about like what I'm doing too, in a sense.
Yeah, that's like kind
Carry
of what I've been,
myself.
and that's kind of been like my goal with both tarot and astrology, is that like I want to be able to like both provide like insights and frame things that people probably already know, but like just frame it in a way to where like it's like lined up
And it
and
builds
allows
their
people.
confidence more because they all like
Yeah,
they
I wanted. Yeah, I really just want it to be like I like offer these services more as like kind of like affirmation.
yeah, showing their strengths. And
Yeah,
I mean, also like identifying their weaknesses, but also like mostly like showing them like what they have an advantage over because of the where things align for them in their chart.
yeah, because I think like for me, like the thing that I love about astrology specifically is kind of this idea that sort of like it both combines this notion that we are part of a larger universe,
Yeah.
but also we in ourselves as a part of this universe, this larger universe, are like special in our own way.
Yeah.
And like people like don't realize that there's like a lot of like there is so much like nuance with like people like in charts.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's gonna be so rare that you know someone who like was born at the same time at the same place on the same day as you.
Right.
And so like yes, like there are like things that like the sun signs can kind of point to on their own. But there are also like a lot of factors to be like, well, the sun sign may not actually be about you. You should do a little more research on that. But like in a lot of cases, like you for example, the sun is going to be like pretty representative of you.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, thank you for that. And again, you guys definitely check her out on Instagram. What I'd like to do now is we'll get into our last segment. So if you were with me at the beginning of this journey of the self-aware millennial, we started off with doing like an advice column. And it just ended up not happening for the last couple of episodes because reasons. And now I've really made it a point to like, ask folks, hey, yo, I give advice too. And so people have actually started. I literally just told them like the other day, and I've already gotten a few responses. So I would like to dive into one thing that I got from a submitter. They're all anonymous, by the way. And if you want, guys, you can submit to, actually, I'll let y'all know after this. This person wanted us to know, you know what? So there's like two of them I was like not completely sure if I was going to talk about. One of them, you know what? No, this is actually pretty good. I think we need to talk about this. This is just kind of going into the conversation that we've already been having. But this person wants to know, do you believe that the older Black community in New Orleans will recognize their own biases towards the LGBTQ community with all of the awareness campaigns happening? And so, I can speak from my standpoint on it. I know that there's still a lot of, like they said, biases in the community. Like it's almost like and I feel like this happens in a lot of communities, where it's just they try to just pretend it's not there, even though like everyone around them is a part of it in some sort of way. Like people that are just in the closet about who they are, like who they actually are and who they're attracted to. I can't necessarily say that some people have biases. I think they mostly more along the lines of they have, especially in the Black community, they have, I don't know how to describe it, like they're hiding themselves. So I wouldn't consider like, can you have a bias towards your own like true identity, Like as someone not wanting to identify yourself in the LGBTQ community, but you actually are? Like, how can you really have a bias towards it? You know what I mean? Especially like from a standpoint.
Well, I mean, there is like, it's all like, it's all internalized.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we can have like, that's why like internalized misogyny and internalized homophobia and internalized transphobia is like a thing. Because even as queer people, we are also subject to the messaging of society. And we also internalize that messaging.
Yeah.
And so I think as a whole, like Black, Indigenous, POC communities, well, I can't speak to the Indigenous point, but from my observations of like the Black community and other POC communities, it's like there is definitely this sort of like, this is definitely like an issue that needs to be like worked out in-house.
Yeah.
And I feel as though a lot of people try really hard to like use that particular sector of like infighting to like inject themselves and be like, well, like y'all are like this, and it's like, we're working on it.
Well, okay,
you worry about helping us not die,
right? But I think, well, I also just want to point out this person was asking specifically about the older Black community. The younger Black community, I mean, like they still got their own biases too, but like I feel like there's a lot more accepting because obviously, yeah, they grew up more along the lines, like as we were speaking about earlier, like having a community of people online to get to know and just like find similarities with, even if they're not like the same orientation, gender, or whatever, you know, like the older community does not have that nearly as much, and it's much more difficult for them to tap into or like know others that are not that, you know, that are not, I wouldn't even consider it like not like them, but gosh, I think that the older Black community, I think that some of them, let's just say the older Black community that sticks around young folks, they are the leading people that are going to maybe hopefully be able to have their older Black peers give them more insight into, you know, what these youngins are doing and trying to, you know, basically trying to put our foot down and say, yo, we exist too, and we deserve just as much respect and humanity as everybody else. I believe that there are certain folks in the older Black community that can help the others recognize their own biases, but they have to, again, be there and understand and know and be willing to and have the energy to check their friends. So in that regard, you know, like that's all I can really say. But I do believe that it is possible. I feel like anything is possible. You can always teach a old dog new tricks. It's if the dog is willing to learn, you know, it's really up to the mindset of them. And if not, then you just got to keep it moving. So I hope that answered your question, whoever you were. Thank you for submitting. If you guys want to submit, it's going to be on my Linktree. It's the first one. It's called Ask J.Mix. And I'm hoping later on to get a few more more detailed like stories that we can kind of tap into. And it can be in the regard to anything like sexuality, talk about freaking health, fitness, anything that we even going over right now, like things that I've already covered on episodes. And like even like we can talk about periods again. I don't mind. We can talk about that again. So again, y'all check it out. It's on my Instagram, the Self-Aware Millennial, and you can go to Ask J.Mix in the Linktree. So I was going to read some of the responses from the racial dating preference survey that me and Bo have conducted the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to actually save that possibly for the Patreon, or I might actually just do like another quick segment on this podcast, but like as its own little episode that I can start like kind of reading some of the responses. Or what I could also do is just post them to the website, www.tsampodcast.com, so y'all can read them over, because some of them were absolutely amazing, and I feel like some of this needs some recognition because their self-reflections were so poignant, so vulnerable, so like people really took this survey to heart, and they actually went in and like realized what their biases were towards people that are not like them, you know, in regards to race. So thank y'all so much. There was like 54 of you that took that interview survey. And I thank y'all so much because like it really helps me. I mean, I know that it could be biased because it's just like my community, and the survey will always be open if anyone else wants to take it, and it'll be on the Linktree for whenever you feel like you need the link. Or if it's not there for some reason, always message me. I will send it to you and you can take it. But it's really just there to help you realize that there may be biases that you hold within yourself about others, and especially in regards to who you want to date, because most people are dating to fornicate, and some people are dating to fornicate and have children. So it's like, you know, like all that kind of goes into play, and I think also just kind of destigmatizing some of that through that survey will help. So yeah. Well, I want to thank Ariana Amour for taking all of this wonderful, beautiful time today to converse. Sorry, I love to say conversate, and it's definitely converse with me And everybody that'll be listening, I really hope that you guys enjoy this conversation that we had. It was so humbly thrilling, and it was so nice, especially after my 2 weeks off, like coming back and like getting a chance to talk to you. I'm really honored and I'm thankful, and I really hope that divine literacy really takes off for you.
Yeah. I'm really excited, especially like in these like weird times when like, especially considering the fact that since live entertainment is down for the count for the time being, for anyone who's listening, please just like continue to promote wearing masks, limit your time outside. Also tell any people that you feel that like are thinking about visiting New Orleans to not.
Right.
Because if tourists keep coming, we're not going to be able to serve y'all properly.
Right.
Because
they're gonna get mad that nothing's open.
That's happening. Yeah, if y'all keep coming, we ain't gonna be able to open shit.
Right.
So, yeah, like stay safe and healthy so that we can
all have jobs again. Like
so that I can take my clothes off on stage again.
Right. Hello. Goodness gracious.
But yeah. But I am really thankful to like kind of go back to this mode and be able to offer like astrology and tarot as like a service and as something to like kind of get me personally through this time as well.
Yeah. And it's so like as I've said on the past couple episodes, like it's a time. 2020 is going to live on in history as like, at least from my standard of being an American, a Black American, like,
yeah,
this is definitely the year I'm gonna look back on. I'm be like, what was that?
Yeah. And also just like I have like a comic relief moment for myself. This is sort of like I've seen a lot of people like kind of dog on astrologers for like on 2020 because people have been like, it's like, well, why didn't your little star charts like say anything about the pandemic? And like all of us in the astrology community are like, we've been talking about 2020. We've been like, oh, this year gonna be real heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Shit's about to go down. We done knew.
Yeah. I mean, oh gosh. I was just thinking back to like, just to when like Kobe Bryant and Gina,
yeah,
they passed away, but like they passed before.
They passed before. And yeah, they were part of the Australian wildfire timeline.
Yeah. Like, to just know that like certain people, like certain big events in this year have already happened that didn't get to actually experience the biggest event I would consider. Like, I don't want to like compare like events or anything that have happened, but like, geez, like this has just been a year. It's been a very year.
It's been a year. And I like constantly laugh to myself about how like literally like in the midst of like Corona and everything, that literally like that week of cancellations on like the internet, like literally happening before like George Floyd was like, this was a sign. Like this was a sign of like both the internet blowing up and like people just like going cray.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, the self-aware millennial is not very cray, and we try to keep it as 100 as possible.
As 100 as possible.
Yes. So you guys, if you have not already known, if you have any suggestions on future things that you would like me to cover on the self-aware millennial, you can always email me at theselfawaremillennial@gmail.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at the self-aware millennial. Make sure you follow me there. You can go to the Linktree, all the things I'm doing in my community in support of the podcast and just my own life and everything. And if you're all caught up, you can also join the Self-Aware Millennials Patreon, where I will be posting another quick episode with Ari on the rest of my chart, but also I'll be talking about the rest of the last 2 weeks that I have endured in detail, because that is just probably gonna be like another hour episode. I'm telling y'all, like, it was a whole lot, and I feel like talking about all of it, but I want to do it in a safe space on my Patreon, because some of it, I cannot talk. I can't, like, not right now.
Yeah.
Maybe later. But yeah, you guys, thank y'all so much, and I hope that y'all have another wonderful week. Stay safe, keep your mask on. And before I leave, hold on, I want to say one thing. All of y'all, it's funny because like the corona numbers are definitely spiking, and people are about to go back to school. Some people, not everybody. Some of them are doing actually not. You know what I mean? Like, they're not physically going back to school, but they're going back to school like online. But there are people that have been hitting me up to make masks. So if y'all need masks, I make them. And I will gladly do it. I do it at a specific price, and I do it in collaboration with my mother, who has the actual business for the mask. But I just kind of take off some of the load on her and take over and do some of the masks as well. So if you want, please DM me. I ship anywhere. I ship anywhere around the country, the world. If you need a mask somewhere on the other side, let me know, and I will get it to you as soon as I possibly can. But yeah, I hope, again, thank you again, Ari. Thank you.
Yeah.
And did you want to say what your other Instagram handle was?
Yeah. So my general handle is at Love Just Lied.
Gotcha.
LOVEJUSTLIED. That's where you can find like my general, just like me being like showing off.
Yeah.
Just like it's my pretty Instagram. It's my showgirl Instagram.
It is. But it like I was saying, I was telling her, I was like, it definitely, like, the way that she presents herself online is just exactly how she is as a person too. Like it transcends, like it's the same thing. Like, you see it, and that's what you are going to experience when you have conversations with her, as you can tell from this conversation I had with her. So check her out on both of her Instagrams, and
also, like, you can follow Love Just Lied on Twitter, where I like do most of my like shit post musings. I talk more about astrology on there. I just went into this like long rant about like my belief about Taylor Swift right now.
Woo!
And like other just like random musings about my life on like astrology, being a showgirl, gender and sexuality things, and sex work things.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ari. And again, if y'all want to hear the birth charts and everything about my birth chart or whatever, it's gonna be on Patreon. I hope that y'all have a lovely day. I'll see y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.